thank you so much for coming to this launch of Lies, Lies and More Lies. I've been putting that out on my socials, and it's so interesting to hear people saying, oh, that sounds interesting. I wonder what all that's about. The book itself, Lies, Lies and More Lies, has a natural order. So we're going to be following that natural order. That means that you could watch the replay when you buy the book and actually get more insights as you follow along. The book is right now available on Amazon in all the different countries. And Jules, first of all, I would love to hear from you and to set the context for this amazing book that's being birthed.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, first of all, to everyone for coming. It's been quite a time, to get all this together. This book has had a life of her own, and Rhea and I have had a lot of journeys together. Before I sort of kick into talking about the book, I just want to do a few thank yous. I want to thank Jack and Dazzle, who are just here because they love to support our community, and they're extraordinary. Dazzle is Jack's amazing son, and you have no idea what goes on behind the scenes that they have put into their time here today for you all. So a big clap to Dazzle and Jack, and a thank you to them. Wouldn't be the same without you guys. Wouldn't be the same. And I also want to acknowledge Maria, because Maria is the most extraordinary publisher, and she's also one of my dearest friends. But someone's extraordinary when the people that work for them and are part of their team are extraordinary. And you only have to look at the cover of this book to know that she has an extraordinary team. This is, an amazing cover that her cover designer created for us. It was the first and the only cover we ever saw. And she has an incredible interior formatter that she works with, and an amazing line editor. And so much work has gone into this book, but the people that Maria has in her team are all exceptional. And I don't say this to plug her as a publisher, although I am plugging her as a publisher. She is my publisher as well. But when you're working with somebody, you want to know that all the people that work with them are also exceptional. So Rhea, thank you for everything that you've done to make this book and all the other books that you work on come to market. Okay, this book, wow, it's a great book. Amazing authors, fabulous pieces, and it's about how to write character, which is one of the most trickiest things when it comes to writing. In my experience, I was lousy at doing character. How do you do it? It's like I just couldn't ever get my head quite around it. And then I said to my teacher, I can't do it. There's just no way. Many of you are students of mine. You know what that feels like. I can't do it, Jules. I just can't do it. Well, I said the same to him, 2 decades ago. I can't do this, Jack. I can't. And he said, do what you know how to do, which is write deeply. Like I can write quite deeply. And then he said, lie. And I was like, what? And he said, lie, Jules. And then a light went on for me. And I did the character class more than once with him. And because, being told I could go ahead and lie, but still have it be in my voice, lie about myself, create characters that were born out of myself was like, I guess for some people, maybe who are actresses and actors, it's a bit like that. You put on, you become a different persona. I never really knew how to do that in writing until I did this particular program. And obviously now I'm blessed to be able to teach it myself. And so the fun thing is you can follow the steps now when you buy the book. You can go on a character date, and not only will you learn how to write great characters, you'll also learn a lot more about yourself, just how warped and weird you can actually be, which is quite fun as well. And you'll notice your environment more, because when you go on a character date, it's all about what you see out in the world. And so many times in life, we're moving so fast, we're not seeing the world around us. And so I hope you enjoy the party today. I'm incredibly proud of the authors that have contributed to this book. I've had amazing journeys with them, and they're incredible writers. And I want you to know how hard they've worked. They've worked to get their best possible pieces here for you all.
Right then, now the main attraction. So during this part, each of the writers will read a short section of one of their pieces. And I'll ask them a couple of questions because we really want to get to know who these amazing people are. And as you may know, the writers write in the first person, but some or all of what they've written may be lies, hence the title. Now, I won't be asking what the lie is, and it's probably or what the true is, but feel free to see if you can spot it for yourself if you do know the author in question. But as you're listening, I'm going to invite you to see if you can feel who that writer is, if you can feel them as a person, and allow yourself to be surprised. So in this first section, this is where we talk about 20% lies. So we'll have Fiona Jacob on the screen, also known as Fee. Hi, Fee.
Hi, Jack. Great to see you.
Great to see you. Sophie, if you could let us know the title of your piece and then feel free to read the piece and I'll come back and ask you a couple of questions.
Absolutely. So this piece is called A Time to Live, A Time to Die. Have you thought about palliative care for your dad? Dr. Aylward said, his right eyebrow raised. He stood behind the wooden reception desk at the GP practice and held a patient file with confidential written in bold red letters. His face looked sallow under the stark LED ceiling lights. He was thinner than I remembered. He wore beige chinos with a brown leather belt, a camel-coloured cashmere jumper, beige runners with brown laces. His blonde grey hair was gelled back. A baby tooth lay on the grey speckled lino floor between us. I wore the same red sweater I had on for 3 days that smelt of stale sweat and had a coffee stain down the front. My navy trousers were covered in beige dog hairs. My unwashed blonde hair was pulled into a ponytail with a scrunchie. Oh, I had adored Patrick Aylward when he'd been my geek teenage lover. We had reconnected 5 years earlier at a tedious Drugs Anonymous meeting. Like me, he'd become an oxycodone addict after back surgery. Tears splashed down my cheeks as a blur of women with baby strollers, a wheelchair-bound woman, and a young boy on crutches made quiet processions to their doctor's appointments. Fiona, speak to your brothers, he said in a soft voice. You know it's time to pull the plug.
Wow. Wow. So, Fee, 20% of that is lies, right?
Yeah. Oh.
Wow. It would be fascinating to know which bits, man. I'm not going to ask you that. I'd love to know, why did you choose this piece? I know you've written a piece in every section, but why this one?
Beautiful question, Jack. So I think I wanted to capture really the experience of this pain. So this piece actually poured out of me. It was around the time my dad was really, really ill. He'd actually been in hospital, I don't know, maybe 4 times in 8 weeks. He was in for 10 days, out for 5, back. And the night before I wrote this piece, he was actually drowning in his own fluid. His lungs could not breathe properly. And so what I wanted to capture in this was just the feeling, the heaviness, the pain, the loneliness, the brokenheartedness of watching somebody you love fade in front of you. And I think that this was what was so emotional for me and why it became so easy to write it in a way. It's just like it flowed. But when I also look at the piece, it captured what it's like to be a carer. Like just that lack of caring about yourself. I mean, hair all over the place, dog hair on your jeans, coffee stain. Anyone who knows me knows I probably don't go around with lots of coffee stains. But in these moments where there's no connection to yourself, there's just caring. You lose yourself. And the third piece I think that I wanted to capture, or that got captured, I think, was when we're in this bubble of life, Jacqueline, it seems like everything outside is a blur. So it's like that time stops. And in our time stops, there is just life moves on. And it's like we're not in there. It's like it's going on without us. Like we're held in this moment in time.
Wow.
So that's really why I wanted to share this piece particularly.
Wow. And so many people can resonate with that. That is absolutely stunning. You're writing about me. You're writing about my relationship with my father, and it's incredible to be able to capture that. I have a little follow-up question for you.
Sure.
If you have an answer for this, is what, if anything, did adding 20% of lies add to this piece?
Oh, cool. Well, let me give you a backstory because I think this might be helpful. So I'm a great Irish Catholic girl. And so lies to me are all about shame and guilt and going to hell. And every Saturday, I was not a good girl all the time, just so you know. So I got dragged or pulled by the ear every Saturday evening to confession so I could purge my sins and become a good, holy Catholic girl again for Sunday. So when I joined the character class, there was something really special about becoming irreverent, about no guilt and shame, and just stepping into this and just being free to lie. I mean, there's a gloriousness, there's a deliciousness, there's a juiciness. But specifically in this piece, Jacqueline, what I loved was it added a little complexity, a little bit of depth of character. It added a bit of levity and lightheartedness, even in that kind of crazy, heavy, just that time where it just felt like everything was on my shoulders. And so what I love is it just opens up a brand new world, gets people really curious and engaged, like, oh, really, did she? And I didn't, and I love that. I love that we can get curious, we can get intrigued, and it can actually add a little bit of fun and joy and just like a completely different direction for the piece.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. Thank you so much. I could literally talk to you for the next hour, but we have all the other gorgeous authors and writers to talk to. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, moving on from that, we're now into the 50% lies. So that's half the pieces that you're going to hear next from Margot George and Chris Manda will be 50% lies. And I believe that what I've heard Jules say is that the shift to this amount of lies in a piece, especially if you're writing in the first person, actually shifts not just what you write, but how you write. And when you give yourself permission to lie, it opens everything up creatively. And I'm really looking forward to hearing these two pieces. So we'll take Margot first. And again, Margot, if you wouldn't mind announcing the title and then reading your piece, and I'll ask you a couple of questions after.
Thank you, Jax. And hello, everybody. I didn't realize how exciting this would be. So the piece I'm about to read is from Broken Widow. 4 weeks after a lesion was discovered in my husband's rectum, we sat before the consultant. He dealt us a partial card on each visit, one tidbit at a time. over what was to be 18 months of treatment. It was a slow march through hell. The consultant took pleasure from being positive about disaster. My husband mirrored his response with pleasant banter about a small matter of an out-of-control cancerous growth. As they laughed and got to know each other, I was a broken widow, with 4 young children, at 40, on Match.com, in search for a new husband. I'd have to learn how to put water in my car, hang a picture frame, keep a plant alive, deal with the accountant that would be right in there to nab a rich widow. I needed another accountant before my husband died.
That's it's such a funny thing to laugh at such an emotionally distraught piece. That is absolutely beautifully written. So I wondered because of my reaction there, where it was really funny, and then I thought, oh, like it's horrible to laugh at such a a difficult time. What was it like for you to write lies into a piece that is so emotional?
Well, I think there's something like when you're going through a difficult time like this, when my husband had cancer, and he's okay now, but when you're going through a difficult time, your imagination runs riot. And I guess when I started to write this piece, all of those bits came back. So the piece kind of found me. I start to write. I usually, kind of write a couple of paragraphs and just find myself on the page, and next thing something finds me, and this piece found me, and I felt like it kind of needed to be written. So it's very emotional, but it's funny how you can write about something that's so deep and so moving, and bring some humor into it, and see the light side of it. And when you're going through that, you kind of have to, you kind of find that when you're going through it. So when writing about it, it just makes sense that that's what found me, I guess.
Beautiful, and more unholy and real in a way. You can get dirty with the lies and say some of the things that maybe people aren't expecting you to say.
Absolutely.
Talking about something that's difficult.
Yeah. And as you go through the pieces, I actually find it, easier to write 100% lies, 75% and 100% lies. When you're writing about something and you're kind of 25% lies, your own judgment comes into that too. It's should I write this? Am I allowed to write this? What are people going to think? But you can't not write it. When you write 100% lies, it's kind of your imagination just runs riot. So in a way, I almost find I kind of like lying. It gives me permission to write about anything. So.
I bet you never thought you'd hear yourself say that.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. So thank you so much. We'll see you in a second after Chris Manda has done her thing. And Chris, welcome.
Hello, Jacqueline.
Hello. So you're also in the 50% lies category. And as a person who knows you quite well, that's quite shocking to me. So I'm looking forward to hearing your piece. If you wouldn't mind telling us the title and then reading.
Sure. It's from a piece called Strange Characters. So my parents took me and my sister to Disneyland when I was 6 and my sister 8. I was a very nervous child and thought too much. I found the outsized characters terrifying. Who was the person behind the Mickey Mouse costume? What did they really look like? Even Snow White, the closest to a normal human, frightened me. She was too good to be true. We were sitting down to have our lunch there, and an enormous Pluto sat down beside me. His costume stank of stale cigarettes and BO, and close-up was stained and torn. He was trying to be playful with me and my sister, but he was a little off-key. Perhaps he didn't work there and had just brought his own costume. Even at 6, or maybe especially at 6, I feared the worst.
So creepy. Oh, brilliant. Brilliant. So, yeah, it's hard to not say what was true about that. So I was just wondering, Chris, as now you are a published author, did you ever expect to be here?
No, not at all.
What changed for you?
Well, for most of my life, I really didn't like writing, and I would avoid it as much as I possibly could. I had two very good friends when I was growing up who were really good writers, and so that was what they did, and it wasn't my thing. I left it. That was in there. And obviously you have to write, don't you? At some point, you can't get away with it. But I found, well, I'm not quite sure how I got into the whole writing thing, but I found that certainly doing the classes, that it pushes you to write from a different place. Because what I'd found difficult was when I was sitting down and thinking, well, what am I going to write about? How am I going to phrase it? All that thinking that goes on when you're trying to write in that way. And there was something about the classes with Jules that just let you, because you were focusing on the process of what you were doing, it takes you to a different place. And so things were coming out and were surprising me. And I was remembering all sorts of things from my childhood that I hadn't thought about in ages, and they just ended up on the page. And it's sort of like magic, actually. It's sort of like magic. Yeah.
Amazing. I love that. Sort of like magic. Should we have Margot back on just to close off this section here? Lovely. Lovely. So both of you, I'm wondering, do you have a writing process?
I sit down with nothing on my mind and I start to write. And I never think about whether I'm I don't need to be inspired, I don't need to be motivated. I just start writing words, and after a couple of paragraphs something changes. I get into a flow. And it's like there's something coming through me. So it is, like, using Chris's word, it's a little bit like magic. That's and I mean, Jules, this is for me, thanks to Jules for introducing me to this, because I used to hate I used to love writing, but I didn't see myself as a writer at all. So to be here is a huge achievement.
Wow. Congratulations. Yeah. What about you, Chris? Do you have a writing process?
Fairly similar, really, except I think it's knowing that you've got, certainly when you're doing the class, because I tend to write more when I'm doing the class than when I'm not. And if I know that I'm going to be writing something and I can't, nothing's coming to me, I write that, and I write that nothing's coming to me. And it's amazing how quickly when you do that, that something does, some memory or some, thought comes. So yes.
Yeah, amazing. Absolutely brilliant. Well, I've been there myself, so I know exactly what you mean. And it is like magic. So well done. Well done. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, and now for something completely different. So in this next part of the book, it's called Character Date. And Jules sends her writers out on a character date with a checklist to take with them. And they're supposed to go somewhere that they'd like to go to, but they can sit in their car as well. And there is a short version of that checklist in the book, so you can follow along for yourself. And what they do is they people watch, but they really, really observe. So what people wear, they choose someone, what are they wearing? How are they walking? What are their mannerisms? All of that sort of thing. And then they come back, they've written their checklist, and then they choose one of those characters and write about them. And what's really fun is they sometimes write about them in the first person. Because what the writers are seeing in the world, what we're all seeing in the world, is what lives within us. They see fear and whether it's fear or desire or loathing, whatever you're seeing out there, that's within you. The eyes in which we see the world is alive within ourselves. A quote from Jules Swales. So let's move along to our next two writers, Mary and Trish. Hi. Hi, character date writers. Nice to see you here.
Hello.
So we're gonna kick off with Mary. And Mary, before you share your piece, would you be willing to share with me where you went on your date and how you chose your character?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I found somebody in the underground garage of Whole Foods after I was shopping. I had tried other character dates, more intentional ones where I sat down, but when I was in the underground garage, I saw this woman and I thought, oh my God, that is my character. So because I was pushing my cart out toward my car, I grabbed my phone and I surreptitiously took a picture of her because I knew I didn't have time to study her. And she was my character. Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. And what dedication. All right. Well, without further ado, please give us the name of your piece and then read the section that you'd like to read.
Okay. It's called Fascism Never Sleeps. As a young adult, Elena attended a resistance meeting that was raided by the president's police. She escaped, but was recognized by an officer who knew her father. To avoid imprisonment, she was smuggled out of the country in the back of a turnip truck through Yugoslavia. From there, she traveled to the home of a cousin in Greece. Tragedy persisted in Romania. One by one, she lost her beloved family and friends to incarceration or illness. Despite the trauma she endured, Elena maintained her ballet practice and career. Dance was her refuge, her escape, her sanity. In time, she emigrated to New York and began teaching. Elena returns to her chair and ponders the current threat to freedom posed by self-serving, power-hungry, wannabe leaders who rely on personality over sound, equitable policy. Ever hopeful that democracy will reign in this country, she vows to stay aware and informed, For as a friend once told her, fascism never sleeps.
Wow. That's amazing. Especially as it came from someone that you just saw in the garage. Wow. Absolutely incredible, Mary. Thank you so much for sharing that. So what was that like for you, writing that piece about that person?
Well, actually, I had written a piece about this person that I saw in the class, and it was a completely different piece. Some of the things were the same, like ballet and things, but she was Italian rather than Romanian, and it didn't work. Then when we were prompted to do this again for the book, I went out on some character dates, and I didn't find anybody that drew me in like this character. So I rewrote it with different from a different angle, and had to do some research. And yeah, it was quite fun. It was quite fun.
Wow. And I know that you've mentioned before that you sort of thought that writing had to be like dazzling and writerly and the stuff, many of us feel like that when we start writing. Can you tell me a bit about that journey?
Yeah. So, this whole writing thing has not been always easy. It's lots of ups and downs, trial and error. Imposter syndrome looms large all the time for me. And yet, I feel so inspired now to write fiction, because I think this class has showed me, and all of method writing really, that I've always had a secret desire to write. And I've never really followed it or done it in the way that I'm doing now. But I just, the idea of fiction writing lights me up. And in fact, it was in class once, and now that Trish, I'm glad you're on here, because it was in class once. I was reading a piece, one of the Sprinkled with Lies pieces, and afterwards, when we were getting feedback, Trish said, Mary, I think fiction might be your jam. And that really helped. That really lit me up. And I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to write fiction. I want to write short stories. And now I know that I can. So, because I used to think, back to your original point, I used to think that to be a writer, you had to have really fancy language and dazzling metaphors and thick descriptions. And, it had to be so good, it was prize worthy. And now I see that's really not true. That actually coming from a clean, clear, authentic voice is really impactful. And this class really helped to, rather than having trying to come up with an idea, just sitting down and picking a story from your life and then sprinkling it with lies, it's grounded in your truth.
Mm.
And I think that's impactful, and it's really fun. And it's really a big relief, because my writing is more simple and straightforward and clear. And I realize now that that's okay.
Wow, love that. You sound unleashed to me. So I'm really, really grateful for that. Amazing. Thank you so much, Mary.
Thank you, Jack.
So, Trish, you also went on a character day, and we'd love to hear your piece, and then I'll ask you a couple of questions.
Lovely. Okay, my piece is an excerpt out of the chapter called No Beef. His legs spread wide across the black mat, the weighted bar by his feet. The personal trainer stood by his side. She had a small frame, a plain face, and cropped black hair. A tiny piece of tissue paper stuck to her shoe. The wall behind them had mirrored glass, with a water cooler in the corner, next to the fire door exit. "You need to shut up," Lily said to him in her head. He reminded her of the guy she served in the bar last night, an American tourist, all talk and no substance. She watched as his big mouth wrapped around a rare beef burger, and fat dripped down his double chin. "I'm in the mood to pump some beef today," he said as he winked in her direction. "You ready for some action, honey?" She laughed as she poured a small amount of arsenic into his bourbon.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Wow. That's incredible. I'm just going to take a moment to let that really land. That was, yeah, that was quite something. We've all wished we could do that. That's what I wanted to say. I know because I've read your pieces that you've actually taken bits from that piece to read that shorter piece there, and yet that sounds like a complete piece, which is really interesting to me. Can you share why you decided to do it that way?
Well, when we were asked to pick out our favourite chapters or a chapter, and I was reading through the stories, and initially I'd actually picked a piece earlier on in this chapter, but when I read it back again and thought about the character and how it would come across, this piece just seemed to say, read the last bit. It just seemed to sum up the character and what was going on for her, and it really brought out the character date, because especially the piece at the end, that's what I imagined on this character date about the person that was serving the drink. That she had this nice she had this nice, sweet sort of smile, but on the other hand, she was ready to kill.
Good spot. Oh, fascinating and quite incredible that you can crop a piece together like that and it still make complete sense as well. So I was really impressed with that. I wondered as well about what you discovered for yourself. You know, Mary shared her discoveries. Well, what did you discover for yourself doing the character class?
Yeah, I think the character class kind of unleashed me in a whole different direction with my writing. And I think most of the people that have been on the writing courses with me have now learnt that I have this passion for flash fiction that I didn't realise, but I also have this passion for a little twist that will surprise and shock most people. And and even when I'm writing, it surprises and shocks me. I'll be writing something that might start off as like a nice, innocent little story, and then all of a sudden something will pop into my head, and I'll put a little twist in there. And and I think when people read the books, there is one story that I read, and even now I think I can't believe I wrote that. It makes me cringe. But then there's equally another piece in the book that makes me laugh out loud. So it's really brought out a whole host of different pieces in my writing and different pieces in characters that I wasn't aware that I could create, and it's just really fun to play with.
Wow. So that's that whole thing of sitting with nothing on your mind and actually allowing, as you say, things to pop in. That's the things that surprise you, but that's also what brings the depth, doesn't it, to these characters and these stories.
Yeah, it does. And like Mary said, when we go on a character date, and in this instance, I wasn't necessarily on a character date. I'd been stuck in a bar because I had a delayed flight. And I just started observing this person, and then this character started to form, and then I started like jotting, like Mary, jotting things down in my phone. And then all of a sudden this character appears, and it's just really fun to play with.
Wow. Wow. Well, congratulations. Absolutely stunning, both of you. Thank you so much. So back to the lies. Next, we have 75% lies. That's quite a fair bit of lies in there. So next up, I'd like to introduce Bianca Bazin and Sela Berman. And in this part of the book, the writers are making up 75% of the piece that they've written. So when you listen, you can perhaps spot that it's not always the obvious things that are lies. It's the lie within the lie. There's layers and subtle changes to things that make it a lie and make the difference. And when I was reading this, I was thinking that, of course, when two people go to the same event and two people see that event differently, don't they? So in a way, you can just allow yourself to be the other person and a whole different story would come out, a whole different event would come out. So to demonstrate that now, we have the lovely Bianca and Sila. So first up is Bianca. Bianca, would you like to let us know what your story's called and read a short piece?
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, my piece is called Mother Knows Best. Is this a good idea, love? My father asked. What if she comes on time? My mother stared into his pleading eyes. His usual pale complexion was flushed. His hair, black, appeared static, like he'd stuck his finger into a socket. I know my daughter, and no, she's not coming tomorrow, my mother said with a smug smile while she rubbed her belly. I kicked back. So there we were, shuttling towards Newcastle, my mother in a floaty red dress surrounded by important men in black suits. I waited until the train departed Cambridge and then promptly pressed the eject button. 25 minutes later, my mother was squatting on the train floor over a pile of donated suit jackets. A few screams later, with the train guard at the helm, I arrived atop the pile. But I was blue and not breathing, strangled by my mother's determination to know best and keep me in. The train guard called out into the crowd of gawping men, "Does anyone know infant CPR?" Turns out spreadsheets don't prepare one for the menial task of childbirth.
Wow. There's such a lot of depth in that. There's such a lot of social commentary and absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And I know you and your mother, and it feels like it could be true. Don't tell them that though. Thank you so much. I'd love to know for you how it felt to lie.
It felt liberating. You know that feeling when you've had an argument with somebody and you walk away and you're ruminating on it, and about 20 minutes later, the perfect comeback comes back to you. And you're like, why couldn't I have thought of that at the time? So the whole feeling of being able to remember things that have happened to you, but come up with a totally different reality around what you said or what you did or what they said was so much fun, rewriting your own story and just deciding how you wanted the story to go rather than what actually happened. And the more and more I got to lie, so going through the process of 20% all the way through to 75%, the more imaginative it became, and the more fun you could have with the characters. And, you know, my mother's also a wonderful author on this call, but she will know, obviously, better than anyone, how little of that really is reflective of how I was born. But it was so liberating to comment on not so much even my mother and I's relationship, but my mother and my grandma's relationship through my birth. So yeah, it was just a really fun exercise.
Wow, absolutely brilliant, and brought so beautifully to life through your writing. I absolutely loved it. And I also wondered about how did you surprise yourself as you went through that process? Did you learn things about yourself?
Oh, totally. Some of the things that came out and some of the pieces that are in this book are, I never would have thought that I'd have written the sort of content language. I chose to read this one because I liked that it was more lighthearted and funny, but it was incredible to explore really kind of deep, dark, alternative psyches that are very different to my own, but having that permission to pretend that was me. That was an experience that I'd actually had. And so, absolutely shocked, appalled at some of the things I wrote about, but also delighted and found it hilarious too.
Congratulations. Absolutely brilliant job. And so also in the 75% lies, we have Sila Berman, and I'm delighted to introduce you next, Sila. So yeah, first of all, let us know your title and read a little piece for us.
Great, thank you. So my title is I'll Hunt Them Down. Men shattered the hearts of the women in my family. My father abandoned my mother and me when I was 5. At the age of 10, my mother and I were at the farmer's market for lunch and shopping. As we strolled to the toy store, a gold Cadillac drove by. A bald man wearing a fedora was at the wheel. A man with a red mustache sat atop the back seat, waving a shotgun. He took aim and fired at the first person who caught his eye, my mother. I dropped to the ground, laid on top of her, and begged her to breathe. But she was gone. Tears tsunamied me as parts of my soul died with her.
Wow. Beautiful piece. So could you describe to us what it was like what startled you and surprised you about writing character?
Yeah, what startled and surprised me about writing character was the topics that came up in my pieces. So I think there was murder and death in some way, shape, or form in almost every piece I wrote. So that really shocked me, frankly, that I had that in me that needed to come out and be expressed. And then the other thing is that I got to see how much I was kind of working out through the writing. So I had made a decision around when we were doing the character class that I was going to start dating. And I thought, oh, I'm ready to do that, right? I had done a lot of personal growth work. I'm ready. But I got to see in many of these pieces that I was still working out some of the issues I had with men. And so it was very interesting. And also, I see almost that the death and the working out those issues it foreshadowed what actually happened in my life a few months later. So where I went through almost a dark night of the soul, and also dealt with a lot of these issues that came out from getting COVID and an adrenal crash. And so, but it was almost like I look back and can see that some of that was foreshadowed in the work that I wrote.
Wow. And was that helpful to you when you did go through the dark night of the souls?
Oh, totally. Because what came out of that was after that release, right? Then these other parts of me and the authentic parts have now come out. And and also my writing changed after that as well.
Wow, absolutely fascinating. I have one more question for you. I know that Jules always says, like, just make up shit and pretend you're an astronaut or something like that. Did you employ that strategy?
I did. So yeah, she totally told us to get out of our comfort zone, right? I love that about in Jules' classes, that she really helps us to, expand what we again, get out of our comfort zone, expand how we write, how we think about things. And so she had mentioned the astronaut being in outer space, and she mentioned a detective. And I don't know, there was something about that detective that it was like, I like it attracted me, and that's what came out in the writing. And then the writing showed up and went in ways that I was quite surprised.
Wow, incredible. Absolutely incredible. I hope I have more time later to ask some more questions, but I'm really grateful to both of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, we are now actually a little bit running late, but I'm doing my best. It's just too interesting. So, next up, we have the unreliable narrator. It's the last part of the book, I think. Yes, it is. So that's good. And we have Christine Dvorak and Hilda Rhodes on next. Okay. The final part of this section is dedicated to the unreliable narrator, which is a thing in writing. And this is not just someone that doesn't tell the truth. It's someone who lies and conceals and misdirects and misjudges. And it's the feeling that you get when you look at someone and think, they look like this, but something's off and I'm not quite sure. So these final pieces are dedicated to the unreliable narrator. And in Jules's classes, they use tone and voice with some factual discrepancies to create the characters. So, without further ado, Christine, would you like to tell us the name of your piece and read it for us?
Thanks. Thanks, Jacqueline. My piece is called My Last Day at the Bank. They called me Pocket Rocket because I could balance the register faster than anyone. I loved being Rocket, way better than being boring old Ian. Here I was good at something. Here I fitted in. The nickname Pocket Rocket stuck around, and so did I. Wherever the mothership sent me, I went. Whatever it asked me to do, I did. You got to put in the work to get the pay. My ex-wife never got that. Never got that I was doing it for her and the kids. All those mornings I'd get up grey and exhausted and haul myself into work, and she repays me by leaving. Now the mothership dumping me as well. That's not what I signed up for. I wasn't going to go quietly. I'd be their pocket rocket, that's for sure. I ripped the fire extinguisher off the wall, wrapped my arms around it, and hurled us both through the plate glass window. Time to make those fickle fuckers pay. Go off like a rocket. I made sure they wouldn't forget me or my last day at the bank.
Absolutely brilliant. Wow. Well done, Pocket Rocket. I just have one question for you. So you were a man in that piece, right? Amazing. Amazing. So I know that you love this piece because I think I've heard you talk about it before. I'd love to know, what do you love about it so much?
Thank you for asking that one. Like, I love the fact that it's pure fiction in the sense that I'm not a man. I've never worked at a bank and I've never been retrenched. So that all came out and surprised me, and the ending surprised me. But it draws on emotion. I've been in a situation previously in my corporate life, coming back from mat leave, where, if I use the word shafted after maternity leave, things like that, they do happen. And so I had that emotion in me, that experience of betrayal from an employer, and so that it came out in the shape of this man, a banker, who dedicated his life to his work. It was so funny how that lined up, that the emotion that was in me came out in this totally different character. And to have that blend, I love that in the writing. And you're right, I chose it to read at an event where it was I had the opportunity to read it. And afterwards, the chef who was catering came up and started to talk to me, what bank had I worked at? She'd been retrenched and started a business. And I love the fact that the story resonated with her, and it's resonated with people I've shared it with, even though I have not had that experience, that somehow the emotion resonates. And that means a lot to me as a writer. Yeah.
absolutely brilliant. And it shows the power of just being able to go there and write whatever comes into your mind without the restraints on. Yeah, absolutely wonderful. Thank you. So last but definitely not least, in any way, buckle up, everybody, because now we have Hilda Rhodes. Hilda, could you let us know the title and read us some of your piece?
Okay, my title is The Perfect Baby. At 18, I'd been drugged and gang raped at a party. My parents didn't believe in abortion. They kept the baby. My mum stole him. He called her mum. I hated her for that. I ran away. I'd been homeless, hooked on drugs and alcohol, when the priest saw me in his church. He found an apartment for me and my baby girl, my second child. He saved us. The priest had told me to put my baby to bed before he and his friend arrived. I looked in the full-length mirror. My firm breasts protruded over the top of the red leather corset. Gold tassels dangled from my pert nipples. A chain skirt revealed my shaved pussy. My thigh-length black boots had 6-inch stiletto heels. The leather whip lay on the bed next to the black mask.
Ooh. Wow. Wow. Absolutely stunning. You know, Hilda, I've read the full length version of this piece, and I'm very excited for the readers to read it as well. And I have to say, there is absolute truth in the way that something like this that can sound almost very out there actually resonates on so many levels. You know, the things that this piece says, it says so much, again, about society and about relationships and so on. It's absolutely stunning. Thank you. I will ask you a question because I think that I believe you didn't plan to write this story. Is that right? Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Well, I like the idea of the unreliable narrator. I thought, I can really, sort of relate to that about being unreliable and how things in my life had been unreliable for me. And I just sat down and wrote, and it started to come out. And I really was quite shocked, I have to admit, about the things that did come out and how, like, I know we say it's part when we're writing, some of it, a lot of it is from inside us. And it made me realize how strongly I felt about things that had happened in my life and my relationship with my parents, my relationship with the church and religion. Having grown up in Glasgow, that had been a very powerful influence in my life, where there's lots of violence and sort of wrongdoing based on religion and what is supposed to support us and be there for us, and how so often that's not the case. So that really came out as I was writing. That's really and I was quite shocked by how deeply I felt about all of that.
Amazing. Amazing. And to be able to write about such thorny things, but in such an entertaining and colourful way. Absolutely stunning. Thank you. So we're actually going to, I'd love that's the end of the book. We have got a couple of more things for you, but I'd love to bring everyone on screen so that you can give all these amazing writers and now authors a big round of applause. And, raise a glass if you'd like to, and authors, hold up your books as well. Let's all see the book. Amazing. We'll get another chance to do that in a minute, but I can't tell you how much I've loved doing this. It's absolutely beautiful. I'm blown away by your writing. Okay. Maria Iliffe-Wood, fondly known as Ria.
Oh,
Welcome, and a huge congratulations to you. First of all, because I know that you haven't been very well, and you're here, and you look beautiful as you always do. And second of all, for publishing this amazing book. I know that through your publishing press, IW Press. Now, I know that you only publish books that you love. And I know that you love Jules, so let's forget that bit.
get that one out the way.
Yeah, we get that one out of the way. But I'd really love to hear from you. What is it about this book that you were so passionate about and wanted to publish?
Thank you, Jack. Thanks for doing a fabulous job of hosting tonight as well. And the authors have just been amazing. I think you've all done a fabulous job. Really well done, everybody. There's a couple of things for me when it comes to the books that I choose to publish for people, or to partner publish or help people get out into the world. There has to be two things for me. So the first one is that it's really good writing. Like, I want any books that I publish, I want them to be well written. And particularly for this book, like, every single one of these authors have been students of Jules for quite some time. We know that they're really great writers. They were all invited to participate in this book because of the standard of their writing. So they tick the first box. Every single one of them ticks the first box. The second thing for me and publishing books is that the book needs to serve a higher purpose. And this book ticks that box on so many different levels. So in the first way, what it is every single one of these authors have got a really important message for the world. And even though a lot of this has been fiction, you've been hearing little bits of that message coming out in their stories. You know, you hear them talking about the stories and what was coming out in the stories. They're important messages for the world. I get quite emotional thinking about it. So every single one of them has an important message for the world, which I would love for them to get that message out into the world at some point in the future. But getting your writing out into the world that first time, getting your book published the first time, is the biggest hurdle. And so the purpose for me for this book is that it's great writing, but the main purpose of this book is to help all of these authors take that step. Because once they've done it once, they'll be able to do it again. And I think, and for me, that's so important, because they've got these messages that they need to get out into the world, and it's going to make it easier for them to do it next time. So this book is a stepping stone for that. So not only is it great writing, it also highlights the Jack Grape's method writing, which is a really fabulous way of learning how to write really well, and to get your message over really well, and to tell your story really well in a way that isn't, you know, lots of writers talk about show, don't tell. They're not telling anything. They're showing their messages here. And Jack Grape's method writing really helps with that. And Jules is just one of the most fabulous teachers of that. So it also does a couple of other things. It highlights the method writing to the world, it highlights Jules to the world. And maybe if we get more people who can write using this kind of writing, maybe we'll have a higher a high standard of books being put out into the world. So it ticks boxes on all levels. And I also love all the people. Like, it's really important for me to love the people that I'm working with as well. And I love every single one of these people. So
Thank you.
that's why.
Thank you. That's amazing. So if there was just one piece of advice that you would give someone who has that itch to write but is scared, what piece of advice would you give them?
Write anyway. Write anyway. If you haven't signed up for Jules's classes, that's a really good place to start. Because you, even just doing the first level of the method writing will get you writing in a way that you've probably never written before. And no matter how scared you are, I think if you were to ask that question to every single person, every one of these 9 authors, they were all scared, but they've done it anyway. Nobody does anything important without them being scared in some way.
Right.
Do it anyway.
Great answer. Thank you so much, Ria. Thank you so much. So let's have all of the now authors, back on the screen so that we can say some goodbyes. Amazing. Amazing. Have you enjoyed this? Is this a celebration?
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Yay. Congratulations to absolutely every single one of you. I've loved doing that with you. I've loved asking you the questions and hearing your answers and hearing your pieces. And I've absolutely loved preparing for this and reading some of the other pieces. So I encourage everybody to buy this book. Buy it for your friends for Christmas. Buy it for yourself for Christmas, and leave reviews. And if you'd like to just like hold your books up one more time. Yay. Wonderful. Wonderful.